morning, Facebook friends. Helen Archontou here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. So happy to have some time with you together on this Friday. We're ending the week with a very important discussion, and I'm so glad that you could join us for it. As you know, YWTV is all about educating and inspiring you, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware of a very important movement and very important issue that's happening here in New Jersey. And it's something that, women should really be focused on. We should all be focused on it, but especially women should be focused on understanding how this is impacting our rights and our health. And this is we've got some, wonderful guests here to kind of get right into it. So with that, let me jump right in. It's been just about a year since Governor Murphy declared in his 2020 State of the State address. We just had him do the present one, but rewind a little bit. And he talked in detail in 2020 about how we must protect fundamental and constitutional rights to full reproductive freedom. And no matter what was happening in Washington, that we are working to protect women's full reproductive rights as a matter of state law. To achieve this goal, the Reproductive Freedom Act was introduced back in October. And since then, the federal outlook has shifted on the United States Supreme Court and before Roe versus Wade. And it was brought up here in New Jersey that we must take some necessary steps to be able to guarantee reproductive rights. And so the Reproductive Freedom Act is an important step toward delivering equitable reproductive health care for all New Jerseyans. And so with us today, we will be talking with Roxanne Sutocky, who is the Director of Community Engagement at the Women's Centers, as well as Assemblywoman Annette Chaparro, who is representing the 33rd District. And let me tell you a little bit about our guests before we jump into the conversation, and we have a lot to talk about. So I know we all want to get there. Roxanne serves as the Director of Community Engagement for the Women's Centers, which is a group of independent abortion providers specializing in first and second trimester abortion care in Connecticut, Georgia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Her home base is in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at her Women's Center there, and she helps coordinate the state's Reproductive Health Coalition, which is Thrive New Jersey. Roxanne facilitates educational, political, and volunteer opportunities for community members and seeks to break down misinformation and stigma surrounding abortion care. Then we also have, so grateful, in addition to Roxanne, to have Assemblywoman Annette Chaparro, who is a Democratic member of the New Jersey General Assembly, serving her third term representing the 33rd District. She is proud to be the first woman from Hoboken to represent the 33rd District, which includes Hudson County municipalities of Hoboken, Union City, Weehawken, and a portion of Jersey City. She's also the Vice Chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee, Vice Chair of the Special Committee on Infrastructure and Natural Resources, and a member of Community Development Affairs and Transportation and Independent Authorities Committees. Welcome, ladies. So happy that you could both make time in your busy schedules to join us today for this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Well, we're so grateful. So Roxanne, let's start by telling everyone a little about Thrive New Jersey. I think it's important for us to share about the coalition and the work that you're doing there. Just so everyone watching knows, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey is a proud member of the Thrive Coalition. And, there's lots to get involved there and lots for you all to learn about there. And we will be putting in the comments for you how you can follow Thrive New Jersey on their social media accounts, both Instagram and Twitter, as well as how you can connect and learn more about them on their website. But let's hear from you. Tell us, and what a machine, I have to say, to Thrive.
Yes.
I'm so impressed with how, on it and, the tentacles, how you've really built out the coalition and what a power source and power base you've created. So please share a little bit about it with us.
Well, thank you so much. We're so glad to have YWCA of Northern New Jersey as members. We actually, at this time, have a little over 70 organizational members as part of our full coalition, which is aimed at promoting, sexual and reproductive health rights and justice throughout the state. And right now we're doing that work through 5 robust, very active subcommittees that work on abortion access, but also menstrual equity, maternal justice, sex education, and we have an interfaith council. And so we know that, no one, as Audre Lorde said, leads a single issue life. Our reproductive rights, our reproductive health are tied into so many different issues within our lives. They're also highly stigmatized issues. And so I think it's really important to be really forward, be really bold, be really loud when we're advocating for these issues. And so I'm really grateful in the work that we do around abortion access to have such a strong group of organizations standing at the forefront of this work.
Well, as I said, you've done an amazing job assembling everyone and empowering, everyone to, work collectively, around this issue for sure. So, Assemblywoman, could you talk to us a little bit about why this is a critical time in New Jersey that we take action to protect and expand access to reproductive health services?
Because the time was yesterday, so we're behind.
Yeah.
I would say that when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away in September, I think all women felt a chill going down their spine. And I think it's extremely important. And by the way, when this bill was dropped in as a piece of legislation, it was on October 8th, which was my birthday. So I felt it was a sign we had to get behind this. And it is extremely important. Like I said, that the time was yesterday. You can see how a death as big as that for us, it impacts us. For someone that was so an advocate for so many years for women's rights, and for us to have that taken from us, it was a huge loss, a big blow. And we can see how it could unravel right in front of us, and we can take 10 steps back, 10 important and crucial steps back. So this is a critical time for us to just get this done. It's very important for us.
Well, I look forward to talking a little bit more in a moment about what it is we need to do, because I know that there's some good action items. But Roxanne, can you talk a little bit just to kind of help frame the issue for us a little bit about what are the biggest barriers to reproductive health access that are facing New Jersey communities?
Absolutely. And I think when we look at the landscape of access in the United States, the variables are huge. The differences between just Pennsylvania, which, I'm in Cherry Hill, Philadelphia is just 10-minute drive across the bridge, is like worlds away. But even though we don't have a ton of laws in statute that are restricting access, there still are barriers that people face every day when they're seeking contraception and when they're seeking abortion care services specifically. So New Jersey does have regulations. They're not statutes. They're in the regulatory code that limit where abortions can be provided, who can provide them. And so one of the biggest barriers is transportation, right? So there are folks in the rural areas of the state in Cape May County who don't have an abortion provider in their area, in their hometown. And so they're faced with travel of sometimes upwards of 90 minutes just to make it to Cherry Hill Women's Center. And for those who utilize public transportation, that's more like 2, 3, upwards of 4 hours. On top of that, folks have to figure out childcare for a full day appointment and also time off of work. So there's intersecting issues here around making sure that people have equitable paid time off and childcare. And of course, right now during the pandemic, all of these issues are being compounded on. People have less financial resources. They have less access to things like transportation. We saw tons of hiccups in public transportation, especially at the top of the pandemic. So people are really struggling just to be able to make it to their appointment, even without some of the more restrictive laws like waiting in some other states.
Well, I appreciate you giving that detail. Assemblywoman, is there anything else that you'd like to add around the pandemic and how it's compounded gaps in access?
I think it's the obvious, right? Everything shut down. So when everything shut down, there's so many things that fell through the crack, right? Everyone is on crisis mode. So imagine someone that's pregnant, whether you're giving birth or trying to make a decision of getting an abortion. the decision alone of what you have to do for health, your health decisions, right? Your own decisions is weighing enough on a woman, right? It's never easy decisions. Imagine the mental health that comes with it during a pandemic, and you have no access to anything because really everything's shut down. So this pandemic really elevated all the barriers that we have. So I think it's crucial that we just get this done, not to wait for anything else to happen, because life is unpredictable and so many changes. No one predicted a pandemic like this or prepare for it, obviously, because we had so many challenges on every topic. The state was on shutdown mode and everyone suffers, especially women.
Absolutely. So can you, Assemblywoman, just take us into an understanding of the major components of the Reproductive Freedom Act? And after that, we do have a question from one of our viewers, which is, which within that, if you can answer, do we have, sorry, Rebecca, pinging. Do we have any other states that have similar legislation in the works? One of our viewers is asking so do we have any other states that have similar legislation in the works? But it would be great to just understand what the major components of the act are, and then maybe we can answer that question as well.
I'm sorry, that was for me, right? Okay. Okay, so I guess if you could take the letters in the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is R for rights, F for financial barrier, and A for access. So if you can remember those three, those are important. And of course, your rights, your right to for birth control, your right to any pregnancy-related health decisions that you make, including abortion. Financial barriers, I mean, I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. We want to make sure you can have your rights and access to all that without the financial barrier, which is something that is very personal to me and very much the drive for this. And of course, access. As Roxanne has pointed out, we want to make sure that you have access to birth control. And one of it is, make it for a year. These 3 months, 6 months, it just baffles me why that even came to play. Because I mean, I'm sure many women that have been through that, you go to the doctor to get the appointment, they don't even ask you many questions. It's just a little prescription. They just give it to you again. So you feel like it was a waste of your time when that's all you really wanted. And some women can't make those doctor's appointments. So now what? So we wanted to, access is the third one, and we want to make sure that we expand on that and that we break down medically unnecessary restrictions. So that's important. As far as legislation in other states, I will tell you, I'm sure there are many. I just don't know off the top of my head because right now I'm thinking about, I'm happy that other states have legislation, but I want New Jersey to be first one, front and center, be the example, and keep rolling with it.
Well, thank you. And I know we all agree. We always want to see New Jersey being at the forefront of landmark, areas such as this. And so you touched a little bit on it, Assemblywoman, but as in your role, you have to make a choice about signing on as a sponsor for various pieces of legislation. What was the real motivation for you to embrace this one? And I know we talked about how passionately you feel about it and how it's almost hard to kind of contain a discussion in some kind of time limited way because you feel so strongly about it, which I can appreciate.
So I think this question is really the core of everything, as for me anyway, as far as what it represents for me. As I said, it's extremely important. I think it was very emotional for me because it brought me back to my childhood, how I grew up, what I've seen, what I've witnessed. I am 53 years old and I grew up in the housing authority. And at a time when teens were having babies, I have to tell you, I was one of them. I had my first child at 17. Teens were having babies, the shame, the poverty, the guilt, all that came with it. And there were so many consequences to that, right? You had people that were suffering, young women that didn't have the education as to what to do with their body, because that wasn't a discussion. They made decisions. Some of them were forced to have babies. And that we have to understand, there's a bigger picture to that, right? And where I grew up, I remember seeing children in child services, foster care. You are passing on your pain because the magnitude of what you're doing with your body, with your life, and it didn't matter the consequences. It felt like you just had to do these choices. It brought me back to, we're still talking about that now. I'm a grandmother. We're still talking about that. And it made me think of so many other things, and maybe it may seem off topic, but it's not. I feel that, women are sexually assaulted, and we are constantly, I feel, defending ourselves. We're constantly trying to defend our worth, what our rights are, equal pay, no means no. It just seems like we are constantly fighting. And this, to me, is something that is very important and basic, and it covers everyone, regardless of your choice. The decision is not easy. It's not black and white. We have to live with those decisions. And that was so much my passion. And I felt the pain that the young girls that I was, or my friends, or, just the stigma that came with it, that they just felt like their life was over. And there were consequences. Who got on drugs? Who couldn't afford that? The kid, the father was nowhere to be found. And let me just say, there's no rules and regulations for that, right? So the women have to deal with a lot of stuff. And I don't care what anybody says, all those consequences, taxpayer pay the price. There are programs that have to be in place, children that are hurting, that shouldn't be hurting, and mental health issues. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So this, as all over as the place I am, it does tie in. There are a lot of consequences that go with it. It's crucial for us to pass this bill. I can't tell you how important it is. Politics aside, what you believe in, this is giving you that right. It's your right to choose. I should not feel that someone else is going to make that choice for me. Because you know what happens too. This is one of the hypocrisies that I see. I won't point that into, but I just want to kind of be generic about it. There's someone always saying you have so many options. You have so many options in the forefront until they get you to do something that they want you to do. And then if they decide to bail out, you're left dealing with everything, your emotions, where you're living, how you're going to support yourself and your child. There's so many things, and we have to give people the proper tools. And I'm sure there's going to be a companion to this, and there's going to be so many things, but we need to pass this now. It's important. And I could go on and on and on because I could just keep going, but that's important. That's why this was a no-brainer for me.
Well, your passion, I think, it really speaks volumes. And I appreciate you sharing your own personal life experience and, how it helped frame the importance of this issue for you, and how you also connected the lines to policy implications and what the taxpayer is dealing with today.
Right.
Because I think, sometimes that's where these issues, fall flat, is that people can't always connect the dots. And I appreciate you, being able to do that for us. I know Phoebe Pollinger is watching, and she's sharing rights without access is meaningless. And I know she's a real force, in these discussions, and I'm part of this as well. So I appreciate, her calling out, that as well, because that is, the goal here. Mm-hmm. So Roxanne, can you talk to us a little bit about reproductive rights and the codification, and how these protections differ from those that were afforded to us by Roe versus Wade back in 1973?
Sure, absolutely. And I know there was a question about other states. There was a kind of a tide that turned in 2019 where we saw a lot of states starting to codify reproductive rights. We saw this in Illinois, in New York, Rhode Island, Vermont. And it definitely is beyond time for New Jersey to take action. Yes. But we know that what reproductive or the Roe versus Wade precedent protected was, as Assemblywoman said, the right to choose, or, the right to access an abortion, the right to privacy, and the right to make that decision together with a medical provider. The Reproductive Freedom Act is really unique in that it declares that all New Jerseyans, so including cisgender women, transgender men, and non-binary people, everybody who can become pregnant, has both the fundamental right to access reproductive health care like birth control and pregnancy-related services like abortion, but also that they have the right to make their own healthcare decisions without interference from politicians when it comes to whatever pregnancy outcome it is that they choose. And even more broadly than that, it says without interference and without discrimination. So we have protections built into this bill within that rights codification to ensure that regardless of your sex, regardless of your gender, regardless of your ethnicity, your religion, there cannot be any obstacles in your way.
Right.
And I think Phoebe made the excellent point that rights piece is so incredibly important, especially with these mounting threats at the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. But the access piece, that equitable access, is really what is so unique and so important about this bill. And I think what is going to really impact the day-to-day life for people in New Jersey.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's very important for our viewers to understand, the scope, of what we're trying to do here in New Jersey, for sure. So, Assemblywoman, and Roxanne as well, we have a lot of people watching. What are some action items? How can they support the Reproductive Freedom Act? How can they learn more about it? How can they get involved? And, and for those of you watching, this is an important issue for you to get educated on personally, but it's also an important issue for you to integrate into your conversations with your friends, with your family members, with the various groups that you're connected to. Roxanne spoke about the 70 groups that are connected to Thrive right now. If you are connected to an organization, we encourage you to reach out and connect to Thrive to expand that network further, because that is, it's very, very important that we get our full state engaged, in this discussion, because this isn't the end of it either. As I said, this is just one piece of it, and then there's more work to do. So, ladies, I leave it to you. Tell us a little bit about what and how we can do more.
So I'll start off, because I think Roxanne can pretty much give more of the nitty-gritty things of how we can do. But know that this piece of legislation has 22 assembly members on it. So that's huge. And on the Senate side, there's 6. So that alone tells you that we need to just push leadership to post the bill, right? We should have, you should reach out to every legislator across the board, every legislator in the state, even Booker and Menendez, your congressman, everyone, you just need to reach to every single legislator in New Jersey. You need to speak to more women. I think the conversation needs to be without judgment. The conversation needs to be there. Don't have to agree, but once you start talking and it becomes more of a topic, people start to ask questions. I know as a legislator, and this was not something I wanted to be. I've just kind of got into it, and now I'm so happy that I'm a legislator, because a lot of the stuff like this reminds me of how I grew up, the things that I've seen, and the changes that need to be made. But this is huge, and we need to keep talking about it. The more you talk about it, there are things that I've learned. There are things that I went, I never thought of that. And you can always mold it to be something that you want it to be. There's discussions, and this is what we need to do. We need to educate not only other women, but men. We need to bring men into the group of discussion. I'm a mother of 3 boys. This is what I talk about. I also think it's very important that we talk to our children early on. And it's not about abortion, just knowing their rights. That's really what it comes down to: respecting your body, knowing your rights as a young woman. And, keep pushing. It's so important. You need to social media is your friend. The organizations that Roxanne is working with and everybody else is huge, and a big, it's such a blessing, because they have all the information they gather. And if they don't have the answer, they're going to get the answer. It's huge that we all stick together and work together and continue to do things like this. This is important.
Thank you. Roxanne, what can you add to that?
Yeah, I think as Assemblywoman Chaparro said, it's really important that we're all raising our voices around this issue, even if it feels like something reproductive health might not be something that immediately impacts you. I think we can all agree that we want the resources in our state to be equitable. And those impacts that I talked about around financial resources, transportation, travel, childcare, really impact folks in our community disproportionately. It disproportionately impacts Black, Indigenous people of color, young people who are working to end meet, again, those people who are living in rural areas, and young people. And so I think if we want our state to be a leader, and we want everyone to have access to their reproductive autonomy and the excellent health services that New Jersey has to offer across the board. It's really important that we take action. And so, Helen, you mentioned just getting educated on the issue. We have a landing page for the Reproductive Freedom Act that you can link to from our Thrive New Jersey Coalition page. And I know YWCA is going to share out that link. You can actually read our bill. This bill is really extensive. There's a lot of different pieces. So I encourage you to get familiar in, all of the different working pieces and what they mean. And then on that same, you can take action really easily. We wanted to make this quick and efficient. And so, as Assemblywoman Chaparro mentioned, that there are some holdups in leadership, especially in the Assembly, have made it really easy so that you can contact not only your legislator, but the Senate and Assembly Health Committee chairs, as well as the Senate and Health Committee leadership. And so it takes about 1 or 2 minutes to plug in your information, and it'll automatically generate an email. Calls to your lawmakers are also extremely effective. And so just picking up the phone, it takes 1 or 2 minutes just to stand in that place of support for reproductive health, for abortion access specifically, because it is so highly stigmatized and politicized in this moment, and for your support for the Reproductive Freedom Act. There also is a really exciting way to plug in with us in support of the Reproductive Freedom Act next week. We're hosting a virtual rally on Wednesday, March the 3rd. That's going to be at noon online on Zoom. There's a registration required, so we'll drop the link for you. Again, just takes a moment to plug in, and then you can join us. We're going to bring all of the rally components from when we were gathering in person to this virtual rally, and really just raise our energy and spend some time together, focusing the spotlight on grassroots, on our community members and our community leaders. Because we know, there's real power in our legislative champions like Assemblywoman Chaparro, but also each and every one of us has a ton of power to make these changes that we want to see in our communities. And I think on the smallest micro level, just having those conversations with the people that are closest to you, saying that you are someone who is abortion positive, just saying that word. So many times we hear people say the A word, or they're afraid to have these conversations, and the opposition really claims this moral high ground, which to me is completely inappropriate. We know that when folks are denied access to wanted abortion, they're 4 times more likely to find themselves living in poverty. They're more likely to have negative health outcomes at the end of pregnancy, like eclampsia and death. This is not a moral high ground. And so, there's a fear of conflict and a fear to have these hard conversations, but they make a huge difference in the political landscape, in our social landscape, and just on the day-to-day lives for people who've had abortions. And we know that's 1 in 4 women in the United States within their lifetime.
Right.
Well, I appreciate all those very concrete ways that we can get involved. And for those of you watching, as you know, we've been putting in the comments for you links so that you can get involved in the virtual rally next week. Again, how you can follow Thrive on their social media sites, and also how you can connect to their website so you can get a lot of information. And again, just want to echo what Roxanne, the Assemblywoman, said. We do each have power, and our voice is where that starts, and using that power to make sure that the folks that you put in office, because again, I always like to remind everyone that they all work for us. We elected them. That we need to tell them it doesn't end there. It doesn't end on November 4th. We need to tell them and keep telling them how we feel about important issues like this. So please make sure that you spend some time on the site. They make it very easy for you and give you the language. You can tweak it and make it your own if you want, but it's it's easiest for you to be able to have some language and sit with it, and then decide how and where to share it, whether it's directly to our elected officials, but also how to craft conversations that you can have with the people in your life. Because again, this is how networks, create movements, and this is what we're working on here together collectively. And I just want to shout out to all of our viewers. We have some wonderfully supportive comments that are coming in, again from Phoebe and from Carol and Lascalzo, as well as Noel Tunjian. And, we've got Hollis Thomas, one of our board members, who's, watching and, cheering on this conversation. So we're grateful for all of the viewers. And let me just say, I mean, we know this. It's 11 o'clock in the middle of the day. There's a lot of people that are still working from home or on a Zoom for work, and they can't watch this right now. If there's someone in your life that you wish had seen this conversation, do not despair. They easily have access to it, as they should have access to all their reproductive rights. Easy access to this broadcast. You can take the link and you can share it in Messenger to them. You can share it to your Facebook page. You can create a watch party so people can watch it with you. You can copy the link and send it in a text and send it in an email. There's so many ways to continue to get this word out after this broadcast ends, and we encourage you to do that. And we also encourage anyone, as they're watching, if they have more questions, to reach out to the Assemblywoman, to reach out to Roxanne, to connect with Thrive Community, and through that get your questions answered and help be part of the movement for sure. I really want to thank you both for your work around this issue, your commitment to it, and continuing to bring the discussion and the conversations past this individual act, into a broader spectrum of work that needs to be done. Obviously, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey is a supporter of the coalition and the work that's happening here. We encourage everyone to be part of the virtual rally. You can safely, in the midst of this time, participate and make sure that your voice is heard. And with that, I also want to make sure that you mark your calendars tonight. If you haven't had a chance yet, we have our Jen on the Go is doing an amazing program tonight for girls ages 15 to 20, free of charge, about colorism. The Color Complex is coming to talk about the importance about people's belief about skin color, hair textures, facial features, and how they influence our lives. And this is for all girls, all races. And we do encourage you to sign up. It's free of charge. It's a great way to spend your Friday night, meet some new people, and learn some information and broaden your world a bit. I also encourage you, if you haven't signed up yet, we kick off our Women's Leadership Conference on Monday, March 1st. And this year we're doing it a little different. We can't all be together as we normally are, but we've broken it up into 4 amazing conversations with 4 amazing women, kicking off with Dr. Chris Purnell on Monday, who will talk about resilience. We'll follow that up a week later with Dr. Belpreet Burke. A week later, we'll have Janine LaRue, and we'll be ending our month of amazing conversations with fashion designer Rachel Antonoff. And all 4 of these women will talk about living your values in your daily life and how to help, bring your calling into action. And I encourage you to schedule a 1 hour a week in your time frame. We did it that way on purpose. I myself go mad when people schedule a full day virtual conference. What's going on in this house right now between my kids and my mother and my husband and work, that like sitting in my computer for 5 hours, no matter how exciting the topic is hard for me. But we made this easy for you, ladies. You deserve this time to be lifted and inspired. Schedule 1 hour a week for yourself and join us for these conversations. And we end the month with a virtual networking virtual networking event with everybody. And last but not least, we'll have the link in here for our 21-day Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge. If you have not done it yet, Roxanne, you should send that out to the entire Thrive Coalition so that they should be part of it. We've got to get that link out to everyone. It's a great opportunity to learn about race, power, and privilege, and learn and unlearn everything you need to know, and help give you more important for discussion and conversations in your life. So with that, we are so grateful that you can both join us today to be part of YWTV. And we hope all of our viewers stay tuned. Next week, we have a whole great series of shows next week, as we did this week. And please make sure you connect with Thrive, part of the virtual rally. And any last comments, ladies?
I would say thank you for having me. This is not just a one-time deal, so let's continue the conversation, keep it going. The more you do this, the better it would be. It's in-your-face conversation. We're not going away.
Great.
Thank you.
Roxanne?
Thank you. And I agree with the Assemblywoman. We're definitely not going away. We're just going to keep getting louder and louder on this issue until we're heard and we hear folks taking action, and not just this issue, but also all of the issues that intersect with our ability to live our lives and to thrive, and for our families to thrive. And so, I think the more that we can do in New Jersey to not delineate our work, but really build that power and be working together and to be working across the aisle on all of these important issues of social justice, of healthcare, of economic justice, the quicker we can get this work done and the better off we all will be.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both again for making the time. Thank you all for watching, and please make sure you share this conversation out and be safe, be well, take some time for yourselves this weekend to rest up, and back at it next week, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.